Alright, you magnificent bastards, welcome back to the channel where logic goes to die and the whiskey never runs dry. Today, we're asking the question that's been haunting my drunk dreams. Could the Covenant survive the 40k galaxy? You know, those shiny alien bastards from Halo who love glassing planets and worshipping Forerunner relics. And speaking in high-pitched prophet nonsense. Against the madness that is 40k, you'd think they'd get vaporized faster than a grot in a plasma reactor. But sit your arse down, pour yourself a dram, and let me walk you through why the Covenant might actually fucking survive the Grimdark future. But before we start this madness, do me a huge solid. Like, subscribe, and ring that fucking bell. We're on the road to 500 subscribers, and there'll be something special for you all when we hit that milestone. Now, let's dive in. So, for those of you who've only played Warhammer 40k or have a social life, the Covenant are a theoretical alliance of alien species from the Halo universe. They're basically a space religion turned genocidal space cult, held together by elite ruling classes of creepy floating old buggers called the Prophets. Here's the lineup. The Sangheili, the elites. 8-foot tall lizard men with energy swords and honor boners. The Ungoi, grunts, cannon fodder with methane tanks and a tendency to scream like wee bairns. The Jurlhane, the brutes, hairy apes with gravity hammers and anger issues. The other Covenant cannon fodder, the engineers, the drones and the jackals. And above them all, the Prophets. Floating pricks more delusional than the Emperor's fan club. They've got plasma weapons, energy shields, cloaking tech, and ships capable of glassing whole planets. A single Covenant CC class battlecruiser is about 1.5 kilometers long, carrying hundreds of troops, and can level cities with one shot from its plasma projector. So they've got some muscle. Ah yes, the 40k galaxy is not a universe, it's a death metal fever dream. Every square inch is filled with genocide, warp demons, and people so indoctrinated they make the Prophets look like a yoga instructor. You've got the Imperium of Man, a fanatic corp-worshipping bureaucracy with more red tape than a department of motorized vehicles run by demons. The Dectus Astartes, genetically modified humans who could probably bench press a brute and still have enough energy to insult his mother. The Eldar, space elves with superiority complexes and STDs from the warp. Tyranids, biological nightmares that eat Covenant fleets like crisps. Orcs, cockney mushrooms that believe things work because they fucking say so. And that's before we even get to chaos. Right, so if you were wondering why this video took a little bit longer, this is why. A lot of people in my videos complain about lack of comparisons, lack of me doing the proper numbers, and lack of me just getting anything right. Well, I'm here today to show you that I do a lot more than just blab out a good story. But if you don't want the spreadsheet numbers, skip to this timestamp and you can go and watch the story instead. The real fun bit where I lose my mind a wee bit. Feel free to yell at me in the comments while I sip on a dram and ignore you. So, let's get into the tech comparison. Let's start with the shooty, the bang, because that's what everyone gets hot and bothered about. We'll start with Covenant plasma weapons. Specifically, the Elite's plasma rifle, the Type 25 DER. This rifle has a fire rate of 420 to 600 rounds per minute, a muzzle velocity of roughly 180 meters per second, a damage output capable of melting Titan alloy enough to burn through Mjolnir Gen 2 armor with sustained fire. Now the plasma carbine, semi-automatic precision weapon, effective range 600 meters. Now the fuel rod cannons, the fun little thing that the grunts use to ruin your day. fires a 38mm radioactive plasma bolt, roughly comparable to a 40k plasma cannon. These weapons are deadly in Halo, but in 40k terms, they fall into the realm of mid-tier TAL or low-tier plasma tech, capable of shredding PDF forces or light Astartes armor. They struggle against Terminators or Primaris and Gravis units. Now I know what you're thinking. Killer Studios, you should probably move on to the las rifles. And I would move on to the las rifles, but here's the thing. I see a lot more bolters than I do las rifles, so we're now going to talk about the standard bolter for Astartes units. Specifically the Godwin pattern. 0.75 caliber mass reactive round, rate of fire, semi or burst. Fully automatic with some patterns. Damage output, designed to enter, explode, and obliterate targets. Effective range, about 400 to 500 meters, give or take. Comparable to a mini rocket launcher every shot. If a Covenant elite gets hit with a bolter round, it isn't just injured. That bastard's torso is turned into a red mist. Even the Hunter Worms would have trouble holding formation if a Devastator squad unloaded. Right, now let's talk about protection, because if you don't have good defense, you're just a fancy target. Specifically, we're going to be comparing most Covenant energy shields to 40k armor, specifically the Space Marine armor, as Space Marines are just so much more interesting than the Imperial Guard, and they make for better stories. If Matt Ward knows that, it's definitely better to talk about Space Marines. Now that I've got all the triggered people out of my video, let's get into it. Covenant energy shields can withstand direct kinetic rounds, low energy plasma, and even some explosive force. Can absorb 3 to 5 megajoules of energy absorption before dispersion. Recharge time roughly 5 to 8 seconds after no damage. Great against Halo level tech. Against 40k standard infantry weapons, they might not hold up as well. Against a last gunshot, which at its high end is roughly 1 megajoule of energy, which could dent or disable weaker shields and condense fire. A plasma gun, which is 10 to 15 megajoules of energy, one hit and an elite is cooked faster than a haggis in a microwave. And a las cannon, hundreds of megajoules of energy, could pop on an elite like a fat grape on a Forge World. In short, the elite shields and most of the Covenant shielding technology is relatively good, but is more of the mid-end of technology base. So, they'd stand up pretty well against the TAL, but anything else, not too well. Now, let's move on to the Astartes armor, specifically the MK7 or the MK10. It can resist anti-tank weapons, shrug off small arms fire, and even take glancing hits from autocannons. Includes medic systems, life support, strength modifiers, and full communication HUDs. Put simply, an elite shield might block a few hits, but Space Marines can tank hits from tanks, heal, and still tear your arm off in a melee fight. Put simply, Astartes armor is just simply better. Now, onto the big bastards in the sky. Let's start off with the Covenant, specifically the CC class battlecruiser at a length of 1.78 kilometers, armed with plasma lances, pulse lasers, point defense, and plasma turrets, with the equivalent of a mat cannon being a kinetic slug. Slipspace, near instant jumps between star systems, no need for warp or navigators. A glassing beam can vaporize a planet's surface in hours. Effectively, a single battlecruiser could reduce an agri-world to glass in a day, provided there's no orbital defenses. Against the average Imperial PDF world, they'd mop up. Now let's move on to the Imperial Navy, specifically the Retribution class battleship, at a length of 7.5 kilometers with an armament consisting of Nova cannons, which are planet crackers with a range of 10,000 plus kilometers, hundreds of micro batteries, torpedoes the size of bloody houses, armor that can tank asteroid impacts, and Void Mine, warp travel, unreliable, slow, demon-infested, but allows galaxy-wide reach. Void Shields, multi-layered energy fields that can tank gigajoules of punishment. Covenant ships might outmaneuver them and outjump them with Slipspace, but if they get caught in range of an Imperial cruiser, they're getting reduced to floating plasma in minutes. Not to mention, most 40k battles are fleet-scale engagements with dozens to hundreds of ships. Covenant tactics are surgical. 40k tactics are blunt force trauma with extra war crimes. But if you think the Covenant can't match up to that, you're dead fucking wrong. Now, we're done with the spreadsheets. We're done with the pew-pew comparison. Now it's time for the good stuff. A story, a totally serious, historically accurate, whiskey-fueled tale of what actually happens when the Covenant stumble arse-first into the 40k galaxy. Picture this! One day, some smug prophet hits the wrong Forerunner terminal, or maybe he just wants to show off to Sang Shayum Tinder date he had orbiting in a Phantom. And BAM! The whole bloody Covenant gets yeeted through a Forerunner Slipspace wormhole and lands smack dab in Segmentus Turnipus, right next to a nice little agri-world called Glorious Turnip Prime. Now to them, it's just another backwater planet to glass for the glory of the great journey. But the second they fire their plasma beams, the Imperium notices, and the Imperium doesn't like noticing things. The local PDF forces panic and send a distress signal that echoes all the way to the nearest Forge world, a Space Marine watch fortress, and unfortunately a bloody Inquisitor with a power complex the size of Holy Terror. The Covenant absolutely kick off like legends. They glass Turnip Prime in under 5 minutes. The only survivors are a confused Orgrin, a cow, and a missionary who now is convinced that plasma is the tears of the Emperor. They move fast, like a scalpel across the sector. Precision strikes, surgical ambushes, full-on glassing of any planet that even looks at them funny. Slipspace lets them dodge warp storms, bureaucratic delays, and even minor chaos incursions led by a bloke called Can He Stop Killin'. They even run into the town, and it's a beautiful clusterfuck. The Covenant prophets and the Ethereals spend tens of hours shouting religious nonsense at each other, before the elites just start stabbing things. Plasma versus pulse rifles, shields versus stealth suits. It's a right proper slapfest, but the Covenant win by doing what they do best, turning every major Tal city into molten puddles, and legging it before any reinforcements arrive. But then, they poked the bear. A young brute named Dagagurn, the very smashy, decides to test their shiny new glassing beam on a Forge World's moon. Big mistake, the Adeptus Mechanicus takes this personally. And within 3 weeks, a Retribution class battle fleet shows up with enough firepower to turn High Charity itself into hot space porridge. And just to spice things up, the warp opens right next to them. Out comes a Slaaneshi pleasure barge, shaped like a hentai monster, and a demon prince yelling something about no meat. The Covenant have zero idea what's going on. The prophets are trying to pray the demons away, the elites are desperately stabbing things that don't bleed properly, and the jackals are already looting the wrecks while screaming. They barely escape. Slipspace saves their shiny alien arses again. They die through it mid-fight, leaving the Imperium and the demons to kill each other in classic 40k fashion. In the end, the Covenant don't win. Hell no. They don't even try to take Holy Terror. That's suicide. They don't conquer a craft world, they don't break the Imperium's spine, and they definitely don't outproduce the Mechanicus. But they survive. They carve out a wee bastard empire in the Halo equivalent of the Halo Zone, some backwater stars in the eastern fringes. They set up hidden Slipspace linked strongholds, raid vulnerable colonies, and avoid anything with too many tentacles or purity seals. They become a thorn in the Imperium side, too fast to catch, too dangerous to ignore. The Eldar call them the Shining Scourge, and the Tal lists them as Xeno Class 7. Absolute dickheads. Even the Inquisition starts whispering rumors about non-warp heresy that bleeds plasma. As for the orcs, well, one Warboss did find a crashed Covenant cruiser, taped 3 plasma rifles to a squigoth, and now believes he's the prophet of Daka. So there ya have it, you glorious magnificent bastards. The Covenant, the shiny, overzealous, and armed to the teeth, could survive in the Grimdark hellscape that is 40k. They wouldn't conquer the galaxy, not unless the whole Imperium suddenly forgot how to be angry, but they sure as hell burn their way into the history books, with plasma that melts tanks, slipspace drives that make the warp look like a drunk sat-nav, and enough tactical discipline to embarrass half the segmentum. They could blitz the Tal, raid the Imperium border worlds, and generally be a big pain in the arse for everyone who's not wearing a rosé and screaming heretic. They can't match the sheer sociopathic scale of 40k. No one really can, but they've got just enough speed, precision, terrifying, religious persistence to carve out a wee slice of real estate before something inevitably eats them, purges them, or turns them inside out with warp magic. Now before we go, can you do me a wee favor? Like, subscribe, and hit that motherfucking bell. We're going for 500 subscribers, and when we hit it, I've got something very special planned for all of you wee shites. But remember, don't trust any religious floaty bastards telling you to activate anything. Have a killing day, you bloody legends, and I'll see ya in the next one.